Hello and thanks for tuning in to Redwood Castle Studio, a channel dedicated to self-improvement and image enhancement. We also like to talk about self-mastery, and that's part of the discussion today. So I hope this video, I sincerely hope it's a great source of motivation for you. And if you enjoyed today's message, please be so kind as to subscribe to this channel and help others by sharing it. I receive no incentive for asking this because I'm not compensated by any advertisers. I'm providing this message because I get great satisfaction by offering free counseling about improving your life, and in this case, turning your dark or shadow side into fuel for success and self-mastery. So regardless of what you've been through or what you're going through now, I'd like you to smile. Get ready. There's something very helpful coming your way. But first, I'd like to share with you a story about the original man, Adam, in the Garden of Eden, who was feeling very lonely. God saw this and said, "Adam, I'm going to make you a companion. This helpmate will be called woman, and she will cook for you and wash for you. She will rub your back at night and will bear your children. She will be submissive and never ask you to clean, fix the house, or even earn more money. She will always agree with you, Adam, and if you have an argument, she'll be the first to admit that she was wrong." Adam said, "Wow, Lord, what will a human like this cost me?" The Creator said, "Oh, an arm and a leg." Adam hesitated for a moment, then asked, "What can I get for a rib?" And the rest is history. Huh? What? Only crickets? Okay, well, if you ask most people what they think of mankind in general, the majority will tell you that people are generally good and show kindness and mercy to others. Today, I'm here to propose the opposite is true. Here's the thing, though. You can take this darkness or shadow and use it for your benefit, even help others in the process. Before I go into detail about that, I'd like to explain that if you listen carefully to this presentation, you'll hear the teachings and ideas of several world-renowned clinical psychologists, philosophers, and psychotherapists, two of which being the great Swiss psychoanalyst Dr. Carl Jung and modern-day clinical psychologist Dr. Jordan Peterson. I won't discuss any of Sigmund Freud's viewpoints, however, because I think he was just a well-educated sexual pervert, primarily due to his demented teaching on the Oedipus complex. Anyway, in this presentation, I won't go into quoting every psychotherapist as some teachers would, and that's because my goal is to get you to do your own research about the topic of the dark shadow or dark side within the human psyche. I will, however, be quoting myself during this presentation based on the discovery of the shadow within my own internal spirit. I will share with you one important truth from the study of the subject matter, and that is, after researching it, I was able to uncover several of my personality flaws which I had been projecting onto others for years. This was transformative to my own mental health, and it's, in my humble opinion, that after this presentation, you too will be able to see these truths and realize a better sense of who you are and maybe where you've gone wrong in the past. After I began understanding this little known element of the human condition, my interactions with others and viewpoints of both myself and humanity at large improved in ways immeasurable. I now have a great understanding of this flaw and have infused my experience into this message. Whether you want to admit it or not, you and everyone else on this planet has a dark side or a dark shadow to themselves and their inner thinking. For most, they're unaware of this darkness because it has been repressed or suppressed since childhood and even taught against by society, which is part of the old all people are good teaching. Someone just said, I think you're very confused, John. I'm a good person. My mother and my grandmother, they have a pure heart, and I take offense that you'd imply we have a dark side. In fact, we've been Buddhists since childhood and follow the teachings of morality and self-control. Or maybe you say, we've been Christians for 25 years and follow the Lord. We emulate him in purity, kindness, and honesty. So it's highly doubtful that everyone has a dark side within. Go back to your books, John. You got it all wrong. Well, may I reply that if this is your deep-seated belief, then why not listen with an open mind? Because even your Bible is quoted as saying, all are sinners and have fallen short of God's glory. And again, it says, the heart of man is desperately wicked and no one can understand it. Besides that, most other spiritual faiths believe humans create suffering and project negativity through their greed, anger, and ignorance. If after what I've said is not enough and you don't have an open mind to this topic, it's better you close out the video now because I'm not going to get through to your puny thinking anyway. Incidentally, I don't know if you can identify this, but I personally have been treated the worst in my life by so-called church goers. They take the prize, in my opinion, with regards to hidden agendas, hypocrisy, and downright meanness if you don't agree with them or they don't like what you're saying or doing. Let's just put it that way. But that's not to say that there are not outstanding people in various churches. So if you're open-minded and able to see the point here, then listen on. You're about to hear some of the greatest minds, like I had mentioned, that have ever taught regarding the subject of the inner mind and its inherent darkness. It's important to realize that you don't become enlightened on this subject by focusing on the light or goodness within yourself, but rather by making a conscious effort to understand the darkness of your soul, which is obviously an unpopular notion. Unfortunately, there is no doubt that man or woman is less good, less kind or loving than he or she imagines themselves to be or wants others to think of them. Please know that there are scores of posers and pretenders among us, and I'd like to present you too are part of this list. Okay, plain and simple, everyone carries a shadow, okay? And interestingly, the less it is expressed in an individual's conscious life, the blacker or heavier it is. In actuality, it forms an unconscious snag, stopping your well-meant intentions. This means that within each of us lies two parts of a whole: the person we want to be and the part of us that conflicts with that ideal version of ourselves. The problem that lies within all of this, however, is that you're not necessarily aware of the parts within your personality that you repress or suppress, what the mind actually does, what your thinking does, is push us to distance ourselves psychologically from those behaviors, emotions, actions, and thoughts that we find dangerous or even immoral. Often the part of us that conflicts with our ideal self is the part that has these impulsive urges, sensual desires, or evil thoughts, okay, that we emotionally feel, but we don't admit to them. Therefore, the dark shadow within is the unconscious part of our character or personality that does not align with the ideal version of what we aim for. Okay, are you starting to understand this? Whether you admit this or not, your ego causes you to reject and resist your inner soul's darkness. Here's the interesting point to this rejection of the darkness within you. When I disbelieved that I could have such a dark shadow within my personality, I go around and unconsciously project those negative attributes onto others. This is why admitting this is so important, my friends, because this can be seen easily in our dislike for certain people. Are you listening? Often the specifics we dislike in others or are the indication of what we dislike in ourselves. Put in another way, the sins we find most appalling in others are the ones we suffer from the most. Do you hate, absolutely hate liars? Maybe it's because you too are a liar, which psychologists say 95% of the population actually is, at least occasionally. Do you hate those that steal and pilfer? Maybe it's because you've either done it in the past or unconsciously wish that you could get away with it now. May I say that in order for us to become more integrated and mentally whole, confronting this hidden shadow is essential. Again, I'd like to say everyone has it, but few realize the unconscious and negative implication of ignoring it. Please allow me to explain several ways people subconsciously repress this inner darkness, and even how you take that shadow and you project it, push it onto others, okay? The first area I'd like to mention is a tendency to harshly judge others, especially if that judgment comes swiftly and impulsively. You may have caught yourself doing this once or twice, maybe multiple times. You pointed out to a friend how ridiculous somebody else's outfit looked, and deep down you'd hate to be singled out this way. So doing this, right, calling this person out as ridiculous, it reassures you mentally and internally that you're smart enough not to take the same fashion risks. I'll go into several others. Pointing out your insecurities as flaws in another person, okay? Another way of projecting your fallible side and sending it out to those around you. Let me explain. The internet is notorious for promoting this. When you look at any comments section of let's say a controversial post, you'll find an abundance of trolls calling out the author and their viewpoints as stupid, idiotic, or as being far-fetched. Ironically, internet trolls are some of the most insecure people of all. They can hide behind a screen name. So cowardly. I just want to put it that way. Additionally, here's something to think about if you're a single man, okay? You may want to consider avoiding women that complain how men are cheap and unwilling to pick up the tab, okay, the check. These are usually the gold digger types, and they'll drain your bank account. And they also suffer personally from being cheapskates themselves, so that they'll project that onto you and call you a cheapskate. Be cautious. Another subconscious repression of the inner darkness is found by viewing those with a quick temper toward people in lower positions of power, such as cashiers or clerks. I see this all the time when I go to the post office. Okay, not every time, but very often, and it's a curse of most customer service employees. People are quick to get rude with others who don't have the power to fight back. Exercising power over another is the shadow's way of compensating for one's own feelings of helplessness and inadequacy. Sadly, it can cause great emotional damage to the recipient, who may then go out, listen to this, and perform acts of violence as an indirect retaliation to what you said to them. Be loving with your words, my friends. This is one of the keys to self-mastery and self-improvement and improving your image in general. Okay? So they'll go out and perform acts of violence as an indirect retaliation. Ever heard of the term going postal? That's what I'm talking about here. What one does not realize is that they do more damage to themselves when they emotionally attempt to harm others. Here's another way folks try to hide or repress their dark, shadowy side. Frequently playing the victim in most every social and personal situation. Rather than admit wrongdoing, people go to amazing lengths to paint themselves as the poor and innocent bystander, poor old me, that's been wronged, which allows them to never take responsibility, rather, okay, for their own actions. They will spend their time pointing the finger at all the supposed wrongdoers out there, but never grasp that they are the heart of the problem. This is very common in the political arena as well. The laws of cause and effect, you can look that one up online, and karma can be very scary for these people. Try looking at your hand when you point your finger, right? How many fingers are pointing back at you? I can count 3. Okay, think about it. Also consider this. Do you or anyone you know display a willingness to step on others to achieve one's own gain or one's own interests, let's say? People often celebrate their own greatness and will never acknowledge times that they may have cheated others or bent the rules to become successful. If you look carefully, it's easy to see this in everyday life. For example, people that compete for positions in checkout lines, or others that cut you off in traffic, and maybe it's you cutting others off because you're late for a supposedly important event. Large corporations even rig their own policies and identities in order to gain tax cuts at the expense of small businesses. Co-workers will figure out a way to make you look bad in front of your boss, particularly if you are in a position above them. Okay, speaking of projecting one's own image of inadequacy or inferiority, think about the biases and prejudices that most Americans possess. People form assumptions about others based on their appearance all the time, okay? And this may come natural, and it's occasionally useful, especially when noticing signs of a dangerous personality within your group. However, we can take this too far, okay, turning it into a toxic form of prejudice. What's interesting in this politically correct society is that this is starting to become very prolific. For example, people often find it easier to pretend that they're not racist, homophobic, or even violent than to do the deep work it would take to override and overcome the destructive stereotypes they may be harboring, okay, inside and therefore projecting. Lastly, take a look at the Messiah complex. I saw this all the time when I used to attend church regularly. Some people think they're so enlightened or holy that they can do no wrong. They construe everything they do as an effort to save others or help them see the light. You will see them in prayer groups projecting their own transgressions onto others that are not in the room. For example, let's pray for Carl. I think he just started sleeping with his girlfriend because he always leaves her house after midnight. This is actually an example of something called holy projection, but is still another manifestation of the shadow self. This actually boils down to participating in spiritual practices such as prayer requests or hidden church gossip that are outward demonstrations of inward problems. What people are actually doing here is avoiding any actions needed to deal with their own sensual feelings, unresolved wounds, or fundamental physical or emotional needs. Whatever happened in any church, may I add, to the concept of unconditional love? Can you tell me, Mickey? Can you tell me, Goofy? Sadly, this form of projection, which attempts to divide good from evil, actually cuts into the heart of everyone participating in it, okay? Someone with this Messiah complex is not willing to destroy a piece of their own dark soul, which is corrupt, so they'll point out the unholiness of others. Remember, if this is you, I'd like to sternly suggest that unless someone is right in front of you to defend themselves, are you listening? Don't say anything negative about them at all. Give others the benefit of the doubt with a deep love of mankind, because your judgment will boomerang back onto you in other ways. Needless to say, but I'll say it anyway, seeing the shadow within ourselves is rather difficult. So it's rarely done. And sadly, we're really good at seeing undesirable shadow traits in others. Most of the time, folks really enjoy and revel in it. They love calling out unsightly qualities in others. In fact, the entire celebrity gossip industry is built on this fundamental human tendency. When you get a chance, look up the lyrics, or better yet, just listen to the song Rumors by Timex Social Club. Here are two of my favorite lines in the song. Did you hear that one about Tina? Some say she's much too loose. That came from a guy who claims he tested her juice. Did you hear the one about Michael? Some say he must be gay. I tried to argue, but they said if he was straight, he wouldn't move that way. Seeing in others what we won't admit about ourselves is the key theme to what psychologists call shadow projection. As your conscious mind tries avoiding your own flaws, it will deal with them on a deeper level. So you will magnify those flaws in others. In a word, first you reject, then you project. To be more explicit about this, consider that your deepest desires and fears, even your darkest impulses and negative traits, are all hidden away in this dark corner of your mind, your inner soul, let's say, which is hard to discover and even harder to confront. If and when you're able to understand and acknowledge this hidden part of you, it will be the impetus for achieving true harmony in life, as well as living a completely balanced existence. Hiding, repressing, or ignoring this dark shadow, however, will bring about psychological problems, even emotional scarring, if you're not careful to manage it properly. Said in another way, the dark shadow is a cognitive blind spot within our psyche, a residue of who we are deep inside. And part of our mind, it is a part of our mind that we are mostly unaware of. But I'm going to help you to discover this part. Again, for the 5th time, sorry to be so repetitive about this, but we have got to drill this into our thick skulls in order to understand it. The shadow within us is an element of our own nature that exists within our unconscious mind, which consists of our repressed desires, passions, instincts, and weaknesses. This shadow can also be described as the thing a person has no wish to be. That's right. Sadly, unless you discover and tame this deficiency in your psyche, it will stifle your success in both relationships, happiness, and careers. And I'd like to add that it is a big source for many divorces and many job losses. In order to discover the darkness within your own psyche and begin to combat this deficiency, think of how you view the flaws, okay, and the deficiencies and the attributes of others around you. Consider, for example, how irritated you become when you discover someone lied, cheated, or took advantage of another. Then I suggest you walk over to the mirror and you take a good look at yourself, okay? Take a good look at the judgmental monster looking back at you. Said in a slightly different way, an easy way to check the nature of your shadow is to look at others and find out the qualities that you do not like at all, which are often qualities you dislike in yourself and qualities that you hide and avoid. This is the nature of what psychoanalysts will call projection of the inner persona, which obviously pushes most people toward having a warped perception of the folks around them. Okay, obviously we may not like what we see when we begin to look at our own hidden shadow, but the good news is that its discovery is essential for self-mastery. You must know your inner self in order to know who you truly are deep down inside. You, my friend, are both Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, okay? And the latter of which, of course, is the darkness I'm talking about here. If you refuse to do so, to look deeply into the mirror, deep into the caverns of your dirty soul, then the shadow will continue to trip you up and control you. And a man or a woman who is possessed by their shadow will always be standing in their own darkness without escape and falling into their own traps, while living well below their potential. Many of the self-destructive behaviors we inflict on ourselves are caused by a struggle against this dark shadow. Some addictions are even driven by this same internal conflict, okay? Here's an interesting observation to consider. Have you ever seen someone that you knew when they were younger, they were so opposed to drinking and smoking, but years later, you find them with a cigarette in their mouth and a whiskey bottle on the table? Almost like a Jekyll and Hyde scenario. Some would say that man is not one person, but two. The good or conscious man and the evil monster within, both of which battle for supremacy over the mind. Even the Apostle Paul said the following in the book of Romans Amplified Version: "For I do not understand my own actions. I am baffled and bewildered by them. I do not practice what I want to do, but I am doing the very thing I hate, and yielding to my human nature, my worldliness, and my sinful capacity." So you see, the shadow is also a moral problem that challenges your entire personality. No one can become conscious of the shadow without a considerable moral effort. To become conscious of it involves recognizing the dark aspects of your personality as being very real and very alive. This act of self-discovery is the essential condition for any kind of understanding and control over that inner monster. We all know that American society teaches certain behaviors or ways of thinking, such as sexual deviancies, hatred toward others, or wild lifestyles, are unacceptable. These inappropriate personalities are usually the types that disrupt the flow of a functioning society. Sexual perverts, for example. So, anyone who is too inappropriate, therefore, becomes an outcast, and most everyone will usually avoid them. Okay, this is an example. As humans, we are highly social creatures, and the last thing we want is to be excommunicated from society. So, in order to avoid being these outcasts, we do whatever it takes to fit in, which feeds the inner shadow, okay, or darkness that we're discussing. To explain further, usually in our childhood or early adolescence, we discover the line between what is socially acceptable and what is not. Sadly, we spend the rest of our lives trying to abide by these social norms, and when we cross that line, as most everyone does, then we suffer the pain of society's hostile response. For example, people judge us, condemn us, or even gossip about us. Obviously, the unpleasant emotions that come with this experience can quickly become overwhelming. Interestingly, we don't actually need people to observe our deviancies to suffer from them, okay? Because most everyone knows when they are thinking or acting inappropriate, let's say, or nasty. The problem here is that even if others do not reprimand us, eventually we internalize these social norms and society's rejection of our true nature. Okay, we repress this dark nature in such a deep manner that we become inflicted, okay, within ourselves. The only way to escape from this perpetually recurring pain is to mask it. As an example, we tell others stories about who we are, who we are not or what we would never do. Oh, I'd never take drugs. Yeah, right. Which is all a band-aid to protect ourselves from suffering the consequences of being an outcast. Are you listening? Have you ever heard someone say how they are such a generous, kind, or honest person? This is simply a mask, okay? Show others that you're generous, kind, loving, and caring. Don't talk about it, okay? So let me say that again. Have you ever heard someone say how they are such a generous, kind, and honest person? This is simply a mask. Do you hear yourself saying, those illegal Mexicans, okay, those Arabs, or those damn Chinese, scammers and criminals, all of them? May I add that if you're saying that, maybe you're the damn illegal criminal. Oops. I just looked into my inner soul after calling you a criminal. So maybe I'm the illegal criminal. You see, I just gave you an example of needing to look deep within your own darkness before you pass judgment on the darkness of others. Okay, judge not so you will not be judged, the old saying goes. Incidentally, the Buddhists teach that when you have a hateful attitude towards someone, no matter how bad, or let's say no matter how much bad they may have done in the past, then you are actually hateful toward your inner self. They understand the metaphysical world of positive vibrations and how love is the answer to most of mankind's problems, and how hate delivers negative karma, okay, back onto your own head like a boomerang. Remember I said that a while ago? It's so true. We are all interconnected. You give bad, you receive bad. You give love, you receive love. This is such a universal rule, so true, but very few people in this critical world of ours will follow it. Okay, so if you've ever met one of the rare few people that truly understands and has dealt with this issue of inner darkness, they will never confess how honest, loving, or successful they are. Rather, they will tell you that their life is an ongoing journey of self-improvement, and although they are progressing, they are still a work in progress. Now that's what I'm talking about: emotional maturity and embracing the darkness for your own benefit. Okay? A key point to understand and embrace is that literally everyone possesses qualities that society has deemed undesirable. This means that most every single person you will meet will fall short of what society expects them to be and all the supposed perfection that encompasses, right? So we all have a temper that can flare up. Most everyone makes bodily noises such as burping or gassing. We all tell little lies occasionally, and most have hidden sexual desires or maybe even deception for financial gain, such as cheating on your taxes. Incidentally, psychologists have estimated that over 91% of the population cheats on their taxes in one way or another. Oh, I can deduct that. Oh, that meal that I had with my fiance, why not call it a business meal? Okay, in one way or another, 91% of the population, are you listening, cheats on their taxes. Now, how would you like that deficiency, that deviancy, to be broadcasted on the television for everyone to take notice and judge you for? Of course not. So you will hide that evil deep in your dark soul, then later accuse others of the same sin. One important takeaway from this is that the ideal individual in any society is the person who falsely lives up to impossible standards, and the one who has a deep-seated shadow in their innermost being. This includes the perfect religious people that pose as outstanding spiritual leaders. Okay, the Christians, Buddhists, Muslims, or Mormons that seem like beacons of the spiritual world. Guess what? They're not. They all have an inner darkness, a shadowy side, some people call it. One great spiritual leader, however, that was in touch with his inner darkness was one of the greatest Christian theologians and speakers of all time, namely Billy Graham. If you listen to any of his broadcasts, and there are many, he was very clear to point out his own sin nature or battle of the inner shadow. That, my friend, again is called true humility, and very few people have any of it in this current time of personal empowerment. What no one wants to admit is that they are secretly failing to meet these perfect societal standards. Here are a few more examples so you'll get the gist of it. We all know that having body odors or being unattractive in your face or outer shell is the opposite of what society expects of us. So women wear makeup. Men use strong body deodorant or cologne. Advertisers Photoshop people promoting their products. And one of the newest ways is where people are using filters on their social media photos to disguise facial imperfections. Come on, so phony. Wait, did I just call someone phony? You see, I got to catch my own inner darkness. Okay? To disguise facial imperfections. All of this is done to mask perceived flaws and project an image of perfection, obviously. It is all one form or another of hypocrisy and running from reality, except maybe if you use deodorant. Within the chaos and darkness, however, the shadow side of our personality may also contain a number of qualities and potential that can help round out your character. Okay, so keep listening. For example, if you believe that being assertive or aggressive makes you a pushy person, okay, and society tells you not to be pushy, and you've allowed other people to invade your boundaries while you've said nothing because you didn't want to cause any trouble, okay? Your darkness, however, which repressed aggressiveness in this case, may contain an assertiveness that when harnessed, will lead you to success in both business and personal relationships. Okay, you won't be walked all over, for example, and will keep any sarcasm against you at bay, voicing your disapproval to others by gentle correction, especially when they try to indirectly insult you with verbal jabs. I realize it's not easy to assimilate or integrate with this shadowy side of your personality, but it's not impossible either. Honestly, there is no perfectly effective technique for embracing or conquering it. One way, however, and I think I hinted at this previously, is to notice all the flaws and problems with other people that personally bother you, okay? Then correlate that to your own inner darkness. Okay, don't forget the concept of projection. And what is necessary is to constantly be on guard when criticism within your own heart rears its ugly head. This therefore takes constant practice, which is more akin to being a governor or a statesman of your inner soul, rather than just being a better version of yourself. Okay, first off, you have to accept and take seriously the existence of the darkness within, along with its subversive intentions. This happens through conscientious attention to your moods, fantasies, and negative impulses. If and when you're able to achieve that, then there is the long process of negotiation within yourself to utilize the shadow for good instead of evil. Okay, put in street terms, you realize the monster within, then you work like hell to tame the damn thing. If you're masterful enough to search, discover, and work with your shadow side, the journey to self-mastery will begin. Some of this self-discovery can be obtained through meditation and observing your thoughts. You can also then begin journaling, okay? An exercise that's so useful. Begin writing down and exposing anything your thoughts or meditation revealed so that you have it on paper. You have it right in front of you. I was critical toward the liars. I was critical toward the fat people. I was critical toward those that are overly wealthy. Okay, like that, my friend. As an example, maybe you'll write down that you discovered the reason why you hate liars so much. Okay, it's because you have a deep, dark side of covertly telling little lies to others, okay, as a form of self-protection maybe. You might lie about your income, your fitness level, your career, or more. Only you do it in a very convincing way, and sometimes you even convince yourself in the process. Be cautious of that. I also mentioned the negotiation within yourself to utilize the darkness for good instead of evil. So in this example, instead of hating liars, you realize it's your time to begin giving others the benefit of the doubt, okay? And overlooking their transgressions for the sake of not only staying positive, but a self-realization of your own inner struggle for improvement in that area. Therefore, learning to be consciously aware of how we respond to things and how we judge others will give us insight into what triggers us and what's inside our shadow side. What specific traits in others we tend to dislike, and it'll also give us insight, of course, how we mirror those traits within our own shadow self. So, when you feel the urge to instinctively judge or criticize something or someone, try to catch yourself in that very moment, okay? And then look deep in your heart while you ask a couple of very profound questions, okay? One question might be, why am I feeling so critical of this person and their actions? And is this something within my dark side that I'm projecting onto them so that I feel better about my own flaws? Okay, so it's important to manage your inner dialogue. We all speak to ourselves, whether it's conscious or unconscious, okay? Verbal or nonverbal, let's say. Keep an eye on that inner dialogue and what it's saying, okay? Particularly in a critical way toward others. This will lead you to some clarity about the nature of your own shadow. Here's a key. It's important to understand that everyone has a shadow beneath the outer version of themselves that they decide to show to the public, right? Some versions, such as having a violent nature, may indeed be more destructive than others, but we all have them to some degree. The point is not to beat yourself up in the process of self-improvement or self-mastery. It's bad enough you're judging others harshly. As you correct that aspect of your persona, then begin treating your own darkness with a little love, which is a very important aspect of this, okay, to using this darkness for good, this discovery of the shadow for good instead of evil. Your shadowy side, when it is understood correctly, can indeed be a key source of renewal, self-improvement, and of course self-mastery. Therefore, we must look into the dark inner abyss of our soul, okay, which until recently was a very unacceptable side of ourselves. Why? So that we can clearly see key issues and move forward with change. This means that no progress or growth is possible until the shadow is adequately confronted, which clearly means more than knowing it exists, okay? It is not until we have truly been shocked by seeing our actual emotional being with all its darkness and with full knowledge this is who we truly are. It's not until that realization occurs before we can take the first step toward self-improvement and eventually victory. Thank you.